this is Roger, thanks for dropping by. Fastest kitchen time ever. I'm going to mount this little dendrobium that Lynn chose for me when we went to Burnham's. It's actually Dendrobium mohlianum. A German guy, I believe, Mr. Mole, discovered this long time ago. And it comes from areas like Fiji and Samoa, Solomon Islands, those sort of things. And it's a funny one because it's classed as a cool to cold grower, and yet it can be found on occasions quite close to sea level. Now if you're in those areas and you're down near sea level, it ain't cold. So I would say it's quite temperature tolerant as a consequence, but it's most commonly found higher up in the montane forest where it is cold. So it's classed as a cool to cold grower. Well, it will get what it's given, as I always do. And if it doesn't like it, well then it won't grow very well. But you have to bear in mind there's an awful lot of dendrobiums classed as cool to cold growers that live quite happily in my place, and they really do. So we won't worry too much about its temperature. What we will do is make sure it gets the humidity. Right, well, we've got roots, that's good, that are always good. I was just going to say that doesn't look like a Burnham's mix, but this has probably been grown on from a very young plant, therefore it could be. But irrespective of whether it's Burnham's mix or not, most of it's coming off. Just trying to get the ferns out. They're actually easier to pull out when they're bigger rather than when they're tiny. What I'm trying to get to is these couple of lumps of polystyrene in the middle, because I don't want to keep those. And then I'm just going to gently tease out most of this media just to see what we've got in the middle. And but that's not a bad little set of roots. We'll spread them out on the mount. I'm leaving some of the moss, so there's no reason to take that off. Seems silly to take moss off and then put more back on. But that will have the fern spores in it, and they might not have all germinated yet. Right, so we've got some lovely, this is good, this is, it happens with some dendrobiums, you've got to look, orange root tips, not green. There's nothing wrong with that. The Victoria Regina has different coloured root tips as well, they're not all green. I can remember a guy a long time ago, doesn't do videos anymore, little bit of a, I won't say nuts, extravagant, eccentric, but he did a, what do you call it, like a treasure hunt type thing. So when you go to an orchid show, there was a list of things you had to try and find, and one of them was non-green root tips. What was it? Zane his name was, I think. Right, so you most likely to push a new growth up from the latest cane. The other canes are irrelevant, they're not large enough really to be storing much. I don't want to take them off, just leave them there. They want to rot down, they will. I'm just looking at the best placement. I think it's going to be I want to put it over sideways like that really. Can I spread those roots out nicely and still tie them on? Yes, because I want this near the centre of the mount. Now most of these roots, if I try and bend some in the other direction, I may end up breaking them, but I might have a go at not only having the roots sticking up in one direction, let's spread them and see if we can get them going off in several directions, but I can't go too mad because the mount's not big enough. Now I think we'll leave them like that. Right, so that's my mount. Right, so let's hope, I'm hoping I've got enough fishing line. This is my old fishing line. It's near its end now. I do have some more. So this might be the last mount with the old stuff. So go around a few times. Got quite a lot of roots to cover up this time, and quite honestly, I just wrote that. What's the point in keeping that much? It's just not going to be any good for anything, is it? So we will use it all, and what doesn't get used will get dumped, and then we'll be on to the other one. Right, start with a slip knot. And stick that. Doesn't really matter where this goes. This is just a start point really, and it's just easier to put one loop round before you start mucking about with the plant, especially when you're putting moss on, because you'll end up knocking all the moss off. So the idea is to get the loop started so that you're ready to start winding. Then get your roots where you like them. I want most of these orange tips. See, they bend quite nicely. I remembered to water this yesterday. So they're relatively flat. I'm happy with that. And as they've still got some growing tips, hopefully some of those will actually grab hold. So now all we want is some moss, preferably without pine needles, but not essential. This comes from a forest area that is predominantly pine trees. Not all, there are some birch, or tree weeds as I like to call them. They are birch trees, silver birch trees are opportunist things, and they will take over new areas. So where trees are felled or works have been going on, they will move in and take over, and they grow incredibly quickly. So you will get silver birch forests where nothing was there before, and quickly too. Right, I think that will do. So I suppose we've got a bald bit in the middle. I suppose better cover it up, because if I don't, although I could say, oh, that was deliberate to make sure there's some air in there, everybody's going to think I just forgot it. So. Right, now we're going to hold all that gently, which I can do with one thumb, while I get some of this to wind round near the top. That's to catch the moss, and then just come round in stages, bit at a time. Untangle your thing, not too tight. You don't want to garrot the roots and actually cut into them. All you're really doing is holding the plant in place, and in this case holding the moss in place. That's all this is for. Now I've actually got enough to go round again, but we don't need to. Everything's nice and firm, so we'll leave it at that. I think more than enough. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 turns. It's more than they usually get. Right, come back and find our V. That's where the it's the gap between the first loop with the slip knot and the first turn. Always leaves a V shape, and it's a good place to put your end through, where you can then catch up with the end you left from the slip knot, and you've got a good firm place to tie your knot. I always use a reef knot, right over left, left over right. You can do that the other way round, as long as it's the opposite. So whichever one you start with, come back with the other one. But there we go, that's that done. And of course now I've cut the ends off, and you know why that's a nuisance? Because for one of the first times ever, I've actually done a tag. Oh, it was a good job there was a bit left over then. Can't believe I did that. So under normal circumstances I'd have just used those ends to tie the tag on, but we've got some left over, so no worries. Right. Slip knot again, I suppose. Just something to grab hold of. Whoops, missed. Right, let's go round again. Through there. Now we've got a slip knot. dopey. And through there, get in there. I'd be no good at sewing, would I? I'd never get the flipping needle threaded. And just tie that off. I mean, there's no need for tightness or anything special, it's just a tag. So that's that done. It's unusual for me to not only have a tag prepared, but to remember to put it on there. So there we go, that's it. Good bit of moss on there. Hopefully that will actually take and start to grow. Some of the original moss down here that is already alive and growing. Not too thick, otherwise the roots will stay wet. But in my grow space, where this is going to go, it's going to be in the line of fire of the circulating fan, which means that this will dry daily. It also means in the winter it's not going to stay wet, because this should be drier in winter, like most Dendrobiums really, apart from things like Latories and Phalaenopsis types. They don't like to well, they don't like to get cold. If they're going to get cold, then they don't want to stay wet. But if you can keep them warm, they'll keep growing. Whereas this will probably have a distinct rest. Now, this cane is still growing. This latest growth is still in growth. Yeah, that's still actually growing. So that's going to get a bit longer. It may stall now because as the roots have been disturbed, but I don't think they'll react that much to that disturbance, quite honestly. So we shall see. So there we go, a quick mount. See you next time.